Good day folks, First Player here, and recently I have purchased my first DJI FPV drone, which was my very first drone ever. However, on the very first flight itself, I've actually crashed it. And part of it is my mistake, and part of it is not. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So, what exactly happened? Like I mentioned earlier, this was my first drone from DJI, and honestly, it was my very first drone ever. Which means that I had no experience in real life with drones, only through simulators, and I have a lot of experience on simulators. However, with the DJI drone, here's what happened. I took it about 30 minutes before complete sunrise, which means that there was some daylight out there. In case anyone's trying to tell me that I was flying at night, no, there was some daylight, so I just want to clear that out there. Out of excitement, I have actually forgotten to raise the antenna of the controller, and I had everything else working perfectly fine. However, here's what happened. Quickly, I have lost control over the drone, and I have noticed way too late that I have forgotten to raise the antenna of the remote controller. In consequence of the actions that occurred, the drone actually started flying by itself all around, and I had absolutely no control over the situation by itself or whatsoever, which means that the drone started flying over the limit. If I'm not mistaken, it has reached about 150 meters before I actually got control, and in consequence of it running out of limits, I had to return it to home. Surprisingly, the drone has done well enough, and it has returned to the same street, except that instead of landing in the very same position, it has actually started floating a little bit more, and it has went over 200 meters from the very first takeoff position. Now, why exactly am I making a big fuss about this? Well, 200 meters away, there was actually a dam. So, this dam was actually made of sewer water, which means that when the drone has actually crashed, there was no way for me to actually go and get back the drone because I cannot go into a sewage dam or whatsoever or anything like that. In consequence of all of that, I also had no evidence of what happened because the memory card is within the drone itself, and I did not know how to download the video data from the drone itself to the memory card with the DJI Fly app. Like I said, this was still brand new. This was my very first flight, and in all honesty, I can only blame myself for not knowing much. However, in the goggles themselves, I also did not have any memory card installed, and once again, this was also my mistake. Now, DJI kindly report that just because I cannot prove it to you does not mean that your system does not have faults. I am begging you to check your GPS system again and the return to home function, and make sure that the drone does not float more than it has to do. And make sure that all the lights are also working properly, because apparently in low light I would say that there was a little bit of confusion with the drone, although there was sufficient light out there in the world when this drone was taken for flight. Thank you so much for listening, and once again, I urge you that if you are willing to buy your very first drone as the DJI FPV, is to at least get someone who has experience or has flown the drone before to actually help you out with that, because rest assured, if you try anything on your own, it's not going to end really well for you. Thank you for listening.